All right, we're here just outside of town here in Prince George and looking at a mountain bike park that's been treated for wildfire. And we have Melissa to tell us more about the story that's going on here. Who are you, Melissa?
My name is Melissa Steidel. I'm an RPF. I've been in RPF for over 20 years and I graduated from UNBC.
And who do you work for now?
Well, all sorts of clients. I'm a consultant. I've been a consultant for pretty much my entire career and I work for myself.
Very good.
Yeah.
And what type of work do you do as a consultant?
Mostly I work for area-based tenures. Okay. So I work for lots of woodlots, some community forests, those sorts of clients.
So more smaller scale.
Yeah.
More
independent.
Local. Very good.
Yeah.
Community, a lot more community minded in many respects. Oh, edit that out. So Melissa, what's happening on here on this site?
Well,
tell us the story. Tell us the story. Why are we here?
Why are we here? This site was treated for to reduce wildfire risk. So they came in and removed a portion of the trees and left some in order for mountain bikers in the community to enjoy, but not risk the community that's just behind us.
So we're really close to the city of Prince George.
We are in the city of Prince George limits,
Within
I
the
believe.
limits.
Yeah.
So high use area.
Yes.
Lots of forest. What did this look like before this treatment happened?
This would have been a very thick stand. There would have been a lot of understory, there would have been a lot of trees, the canopy would have been very tight. And it would have been a stand that had not seen any wildfire on the landscape for the last 100 years.
But it is a fire origin ecosystem?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes. The SBS is a fire origin ecosystem, and it needs to burn in order to regenerate.
And why hasn't there been fire?
We started wildfire fighting in the 1950s. So the people that would have been here before us would have done cultural burning, and they would have cleaned off their hunting zones by burning in the fall as they left. And we haven't done that for 100 years. So now we have way more trees in the landscape. So what you see in the landscape is what we've created. It is not a natural ecosystem from the previous 10,000 years or longer.
Okay. And what would you categorize the fire hazard that was here before we did the treatment?
I have no idea. I never walked up here before. I would have said probably pretty high. I look behind my house, which is just down the road, and it scares me how many logs are on the ground, how much blowdown is down, how many dead pine are hung up in the canopy. It would have been a high risk.
In general, just in the
Prince
forest.
George, mature timber will burn.
Will burn. So there's a high worry, high concern. So we are within the WUI, if you would say that, right?
Yeah, wildfire urban interface.
Yes, that's right. And now there's a treatment done in the winter of 2022 here.
January 23. Last year.
23?
Yeah.
So we've gone through one growing season.
Yep.
But what in your opinion, what's happened here?
I don't understand the question.
What's happened since we logged?
Well,
It was logged.
You had this wasn't logged.
It was treated.
People saw what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
They saw a wildfire hazard, I suspect, right? I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but
Yeah.
and they realized this is not in anybody's tenure, I don't believe, or any licensee.
No, this is tricky because this is part of a park, but like a City of Prince George park, I think.
Yep.
So nobody really had tenure over this area, so that's why the Crown, the Ministry of Forests, stepped in to help.
Yeah. And so you had a forester or foresters make an assessment saying this is a good opportunity to manage, given the characteristics of what we saw in terms of close to town, potential fire hazard. So you had foresters develop a prescription here?
Yes.
So professional foresters came through, and what did they, what do you see as as a result of this work?
Okay. So as a result, they removed trees based on a priority of species. So they wanted to leave the mature fir that's on site. They left the
Douglas fir.
Yeah, the Douglas fir. Yeah, good point. Okay. So they removed the priority was to leave Douglas fir, and then the second one was spruce, which there's one up there, and then pine if it was alive, and then bulb. So they tried to maintain the old growth attributes of the stand by leaving the older, bigger trees, but removing enough so that the crown has some space between it. So if you're trying to fireproof a stand, you want the flames to not be able to touch, or it makes it harder for it to get to the next crown, because you need a fire to come down, right? You need it to come down into the forest floor. You don't want it to be a crown fire. So that was the intent, is to try and keep a fire from going up.
And if I'm a firefighter, I can't really fight a crown fire. I just have to leave and wait for the weather to improve.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is a high use area. Humans like to come in here and start fires, or throw their cigarette butt, or use their chainsaw.
Yeah.
Why was Douglas fir given preference?
So
In your opinion,
ecologically, it has bark that is developed. Let's start that again. So ecologically, Douglas fir has evolved to withstand fire. It has a thick bark. It's fire resistant. It loses all of its bottom branches, and that should, in theory, make it survive a fire, or it would survive a ground fire.
A low intensity
A
fire.
low intensity ground fire.
Yes. Right.
Whereas spruce, with its boughs right to the bottom, it's not going to do such a good job of withstanding a fire.
Okay. And so when this is done a year ago, was it gone through one growing season? Just what do we see around us for, of course we didn't have a control to compare, but what do we see what's happening here where we're standing right now?
Well, we see sprouts. So we see the shrub layer sprouting, which is good for wildlife. This has already been browsed, actually recently.
Browsed by what?
Ungulates. Moose, deer. We have a lot in the neighborhood, moose and deer. We also have a lot of bears. We have a lot of birds. You can hear them. The trails themselves actually already have a lot of germinants of other trees. I saw some mountain ash germinating. The shrub layer is coming to life. And that's actually something I've been learning about cultural burning. So First Nations, they managed for the shrub layer, and we manage for the timber. So if you're managing for a shrub layer for berries, you don't want your timber here. You need to open it up and get sun onto the ground.
So if you look up into the sky here, I mean, I can only imagine what it was here like before. I guess it would have been a pretty dark, or somewhat relatively dark-ish.
Maybe not as dark as the ESSF, but yeah, it would have been closed.
Closed.
Yeah.
So and when you say closed, that means the canopies are touching, or probably
they would be intermingling.
And now we look up and
you can see the sky.
You can see the sky.
Yeah. So then, if you can see the sky, stuff can grow. Right. Your shady plants will go away, and you'll get plants that require a lot of sun.
And how do we know the ungulates are using this area?
Browse damage. There's scat.
Yeah.
There's a dead moose up the road.
Oh yeah, I could smell them. There's some evidence. Of course, the moose up the dead moose. And
yeah. They also walk along the road. And the community always see moose.
In the post treated.
In all of our yards, yeah. All the cedar have deer on them. So it's nice to actually have a space for moose to come into instead of in our yards. This is where they belong.
If we were going to look at this stand from a carbon storage, we're worried about climate change and sort of storing carbon in these forests. Do you think there'd be more carbon released if we had a burn here, which would probably kill most of the trees in the duff layer?
Yeah. So for some of my clients, which are area-based tenure holders, we are looking at ways to manage stands so that we can be fire resilient, have old growth characteristics, and store carbon. Our carbon in the duff layer is one of our major sources of carbon release in North America, and that actually includes agricultural lands, right? Every time they till or open up the soil, you lose carbon out of your stands. So there's a lady at UBC that's researching it, Dr. Cindy Prescott, I believe, and she's showing that if you keep a tree every 10 meters apart, you'll actually keep the roots alive and healthy, and the carbon will not leave the soil. Whereas if you open it up into more of a clear cut, the soil dissipates the carbon out into the atmosphere. And then on the other side is if this burns, that's a lot of carbon that's been stored that ends up in the atmosphere.
Yeah, and there's a lot of carbon that comes out when it burns the first time. Then it usually kills most of the trees, and then you have this fast release the first time it burns, and then the slow release as those dead trees blow over. One of the things that we're seeing is these forests, they die, they blow over, and then they burn again, and they harvest all of the duff layer, which is pretty astounding amount of carbon on every hectare, I think.
Yeah.
But so like if you were to characterize this stand, is it's not fireproofed,
No.
but it's more resilient. It's more likely to be, it's more likely to burn slower. It's more likely to be a ground fire. It's also more likely to store more carbon than if it was highly fire hazardous and burnt. How would you describe the moisture levels right now? You've been in this area for a long time.
Yeah.
How about let me ask that question?
Sure.
In case, because you're rambling there. No, I was going to ask that question just to be fair. But I was the next question after that I'm going to ask is, what do you think this will look like in a year?
Okay.
So that gives your interpretation. Say it like that, because it's not want to keep you accountable to that. But all right. So we've opened up the stand. There's more sunlight coming in. But there's also more potentially rain, moisture coming in, snow accumulating because of it not being intercepted by the canopy. What do you think of the soil moisture here, or the forest for moisture?
So this is the big debate as we try and figure out new ways to treat stands. We went into a drought. Our drought total at the beginning of the fall was 800. We came out of winter at 400. Usually we come out of winter at 100. So I don't know that we can look at the soil right now and say whether it would be drier or not than it would be normally, because we are in a massive drought situation. And actually I've been surprised digging around how much moisture is actually in the floor. So we argue a lot about commercial thinning and partial cutting because we are removing trees, but we are allowing more snow and rain to hit the ground. Normally, if you have a thick stand, your snow will stay in the crown, and then it just evaporates back into the atmosphere. So if we opened up our stand, more of it will hit the ground. But then the debate is, it's hitting the ground, but we have more sun hitting the ground as well. I don't know. More research, I think, needs to be done there, but I would say because of our sun and the shade we do have, we don't have a lot of days where it's really hot, intense sun. And then it starts to hit July and August, and our days are getting longer, and by August we're getting dew in the evenings again. So I would say just colloquially, I don't know, that wasn't a good word to use. We are not, I don't think we're drying stands out by opening up the canopy, because we're allowing more rain and snow interception.
Do you think because we've taken out, quite a few trees, we thinned out this area, is there less evapotranspiration pressure from the plants, the trees that are actually remaining? We've lowered that tension in the soil. Is that something we can measure, something we can guesstimate on?
I would say we could measure that for sure. I spent most of my career in mountain pine beetle stands, and the amount of water change between a live pine stand and a dead pine stand was astounding. We would walk in the summer and you could hear your footsteps like squelching water when it was supposed to be a dry site. So yeah, that removing trees out of this site would definitely increase the amount of water left in the soil.
That was the squishiness of the soil was in the dead stand, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
that's
and
something else.
it would be like SPS decay, so dry cool.
Yeah.
And you would walk through it, and we'd start to get a shrub layer back, but not much because there's quite a bit of shade still, and the moss was quite thick, and you could hear water. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So Melissa, we're seeing here, this is one growing season. We've had one growing season here.
Mm-hmm.
We're just at the start of the next year 2 since the thinning. What do you think this will look like at the end of the summer or in a couple of years? What do you think we'll see here?
In a couple years, and probably even by the end of this year, we're going to see a lot more shrub layer. So the shrub layer is going to start to grow. There'll be more sprouting, there'll be more germination, and it'll be green. We'll see a lot more green on the ground.
Will we see all these sticks, do you think, or probably not?
Well, who cares? What we won't see is we won't see needles. So the needles actually have mostly already fallen off. The sticks the smaller ones will break up and kind of be hidden by the green layer. But it's okay to have a mulch. If you're a gardener, you want a mulch layer.
Great.